Hi everyone, welcome back to more English with Dry. Today we are taking a look at the love and relationships anthology poem Climbing My Grandfather by Andrew Waterhouse. This poem is one in which the speaker compares his relationship with his grandfather, or rather getting to know his grandfather, to mountain climbing or rock climbing. Now this is something that is quite a traditionally masculine sport, shall we say. Obviously that's old-fashioned to say, but it's masculine in the sense that it is an extreme sport. Now, why would you compare a relationship with somebody to an extreme sport? And what this does is it sets the tone for this poem to be one about male relationships. And possibly something that the speaker is trying to do that he does not find comes naturally to either himself or the grandfather, which would be connecting on an emotional level. As the metaphor begins, he talks about how he would start at the bottom, so that's the grandfather's shoes, which he says are old brogues, dusty and cracked. Now the adjectives here tell us that the grandfather is possibly quite elderly, and therefore we start to appreciate that maybe he has to get to know his grandfather now, because otherwise he will run out of time. Possibly because he's going to die due to age. It's a fact of life, and therefore it makes this mission, this rock climbing mission, all the more important that he does it correctly, and possibly also suggests why he's doing it free, without a rope, and kind of hints at the dangers that might exist on the path to get there. He continues. He says he's trying to get a grip in the weave of his trousers. Now the language there, trying especially, shows how this is actually a really hard thing for him to do. And as we've already said, it could imply that the grandfather is emotionally closed off, and maybe not somebody who's confident with talking about his feelings. Given this is a contemporary-ish poem, we can kind of imagine the grandfather as somebody who might have been young in the early part of the 20th century. And certainly that gives us an idea that he might not be that good at talking about his feelings, because, historically, men are not taught to do that well. This is something that toxic masculinity, which is obviously an idea that has started to be talked about at the moment, this tells us that men have never been good at talking about their feelings in general. And so maybe that's why this is such a mission to get to know him, and why he's finding it so hard. He references the grandfather having a earth-stained hand. Now that could suggest several things. It could mean the basics, that the grandfather enjoys kind of things that all older men seem to like to do in their retirement, hobbies like gardening, planting, looking after an allotment. But the word stained maybe implies that this is a mark that cannot go away. And therefore we can imagine, perhaps, looking deeper into the imagery, that it's a hard life he might have led. And therefore maybe a life that's marked by hard physical work, and this has had an impact on him that it's impossible for him to get rid of. This could further explain why he is the way he is. As the poem continues, the speaker talks about how his nails are splintered, which allows him to get good purchase or a good grip on them. But that also may imply this kind of level of hardship we're talking about. It could suggest that he has faced painful, possibly, experiences. And then we hear about how the fingers the skin on his fingers are smooth and thick, like warm ice. Now this simile is a very odd one. It's an oxymoron as well, warm ice. And this implies that he has an exterior that could appear cold and emotionless, but when approached he's actually very warm-hearted and kind. So, that's what the imagery is suggesting to us. It's confusing at first, but once you get to see it better, then it makes more sense. And then we hear of the scar, a kind of nod to the fact that he has experienced hurt. Now, obviously people can have scars for many reasons, but they tell us something about an individual. And obviously just having a scar would be something you'd want to ask somebody about if they were close to you. Why do you have it? And this makes the reader imagine that it could be anything from, physical pain or hurt to, an accident. But the point is that we want to know what it is, and it starts to create a level of kind of vulnerability with the grandfather. We start to sort of empathize with him as a person who has experienced tough things, as, I would argue every older person has, because life is full of hard things. But also maybe he doesn't want to open up about it. Scars could be caused by anything. It could hint at trauma, and that could be something he doesn't want to consider. And this is why the speaker says that he gently places his feet in the stitches. Now this adjective here says that, sorry, adverb, suggests that he needs to take care as he kind of navigates around his grandfather. He doesn't want to wound him further. He doesn't want to kind of bring up old things that really have caused him pain and unhappiness. And as we go on, he starts to get further up the mountain, or the grandfather. He describes how his shoulder is still firm. Now that kind of tells us that despite his age, the man can be depended on. And it hints to us that they are starting to get closer, or rather the speaker is starting to feel warmer and warmer towards him. It's almost like a comfort blanket is seeing this older person. He describes how climbing has its dangers. Now, of course, in the metaphor, this means that trying to get to know his grandfather, trying to emotionally connect with somebody has its dangers, because it can blow up in your face. It can push somebody further away from you, and it reminds us that you cannot be too demanding, particularly when talking to a man such as this grandfather, who we've already established is perhaps emotionally closed off. You cannot ask too much, and so then the speaker is showing that he has to take this care. He then discusses climbing around the face area and talks about how he stares into his eye and watches the pupil slowly open and close. And this is an intimate image. It shows the closeness that they've achieved. But also it shows the kind of time that the speaker is willing to take in order to listen to his grandfather. He says slowly, again an adverb that implies kind of care and considered movement. And again, this really reinforces what the writer is trying to get across, that this is a tender moment between grandfather and grandson, and it's one that cannot be rushed, much like climbing cannot be rushed, because it can be dangerous. And then as the poem ends, he discusses how he initially hits the summit, which is kind of imagined in this metaphor as being the grandfather's soft white hair, which is kind of resembles the snow-capped peaks of a mountain. And then he talks about how he is gasping for breath by the time he's reached the end. It shows exhaustion. And it kind of could metaphorically show how much work he's put in just to get this bond. But it reminds us, just like reaching the top of a mountain, the sense of achievement that he has gained from this process. And how much he has gotten to know this grandfather. It may be that he has gotten to know comparatively little about his actual life, but he has physically grown closer to him. There is a bond that seems now to have been created, and we know this from the ending, the slow pulse of his good heart. And these kind of monosyllabic, single beat words reinforce this heartbeat motion, this idea that he is calm and happy. And the adjective good, it's so simple, but it really evokes how nice this experience has been for both people. And so with our 5-box summary, we go firstly, the speaker describes the process of getting closer to his grandfather using the extended metaphor of climbing. Secondly, he describes this as a hard thing to do, which suggests that the grandfather might be closed off emotionally. Then we start to hear physical details about the grandfather that suggest he may have had a difficult or hard life. The speaker talks about how this means he must be careful in case he pushes the man too hard. And then finally, the ending of the poem is intimate, and it seems like they have achieved a real level of closeness, the grandson and the grandfather. Thanks guys, I hope this was helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.